We back, mic'd up, team recap. We got Steal Your Girl, Mike Preville, and Mikey Strohs. We talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers today. How you doing?
Dude, you should have just left it at the terrible towel. You should have just you should have just left it there. So how are
Would
you
it be a
doing?
t- would it be a terrible towel if I didn't have a terrible pun or play on? I don't think so, but I'm doing great.
That's good. Speaking of great, Mike, let's get into the draft class. Um, I guess it's actually an antonym of great. Maybe like they didn't really do much here. Obviously, one thing that we'll get into is they don't have their first round pick after the Minka move. But what were kind of your thoughts on what the Steelers did with the picks they had?
Yeah, I'll start. Minka was worth it. He proved it last year. After he was on the Steelers, he made an impact. He was an impact player, all pro first team. It speaks for itself. The man's a difference maker, and he's worth that first round pick. They couldn't have got a player to that caliber at that pick. But Claypool, I think it's interesting. I think if wide receiver was what you wanted to kind of target with that pick, I think there were better options available or a trade scenario. I think you should have at least thought about and maybe try to put in your plans. I think Denzel Mims was still available. I would have taken Mims over Claypool if that was the case. Uh, Chenault, there's other players I wish they might have went before, but they should have traded up. I don't think Claypool's the talent. Obviously, he's the big body. They're saying, he's the prototypical new age wide receiver, 6'4", 50-50 balls, kind of contested catches. So I understand it, but it's not the player I would have picked that pick.
I disagree. I think that when you look at a guy like Juju and you already have a Deontay Johnson, you already have guys that can kind of fill those molds. You don't have anybody who is kind of that big dude who can go up, make contested catches, win jump balls, and really that's Chase Claypool's entire game. He's an absolute freak of an athlete. You really didn't know if he was going to play wide receiver or tight end coming out, which that kind of concerns me a little bit. But I do think that he's kind of just a guy that – I was watching film on Cole Kmet, and he just jumps off the tape. He really does. Like Claypool, no matter who you're watching on that Notre Dame team, you're going to see him because just the plays he's making, even after the catch too. A lot of times you think of these big body receivers and they can't do anything once they get the ball in their hands. Claypool isn't like that. He can make plays on his feet, and that's why I do think that it's a really interesting pick. And I was kind of surprised they did go at 49. I thought it was maybe a little bit early, but I think that some guys just fit in certain situations, and I do think that Claypool fits.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just recent bias, but like Funches, the Calvin Beechams of Benjamins, I apologize, Benjamins of the NFL, they might be able to break out for a season or two, but once you figure the game out, you figure out how to play the game. I'm not sure Claypool's to the caliber of other big bodies like Julio Jones, Calvin Johnson. He's not the athlete. Yes, he is athletic, but he's more of a tight end strength, maybe not the speed and acceleration, game speed that those players that have that big body kind of present. So I'm a little skeptical on him, but I understand the pick. I really do.
He ran a 4.42 40, so I don't think that we can say, like, okay, this man doesn't have the speed. Maybe not. He's not a 4.3 guy, obviously, but that's a fast man when you're looking at a 6'4 receiver. And no, I don't think that anybody believes that he's to Calvin Johnson or Julio Jones level, or else he would have been a top 5 pick. But I do think at 49, I can understand it. And really from there, Alex Highsmith, he kind of went under my radar. I put some film on him recently. And just kind of a prototypical edge guy. He's a good athlete, has a quick first step, a little bit inconsistent, and does have pretty good bend. The only thing I question is he was more so of a 4.3 D end at Charlotte, so I kind of wonder how that transition is going to go. But other than that, there really wasn't much to talk about with the draft class. Obviously, we know the Steelers have a track record of getting a good bit out of their mid-round running backs. McFarland really didn't do much to impress me on film. I'll be completely honest. But if you do think that's a need, I kind of understand it. So other than that, Mike, do you have any thoughts on the class, or are you ready to get into the offense?
Let's get into it.
So first things first, Mike, you kind of notice this, even though a lot of the names aren't new, they're kind of new to the Steelers in a sense that how many of these guys actually played last year? Big Ben only played 2 games. James Conner, I believe, 10. Juju, 12. So even though we didn't see that many additions through the draft or free agency, really, we do have a lot of guys coming back to this team. So of those 3, who do you think is going to make the biggest difference for Pittsburgh this year?
I'm not sure that's actually even a question. The point that you asked that is disrespectful. I don't think there's – if you don't say Ben, I feel like you basically a freaking idiot. So Big Ben is the biggest difference here. Mason Rudolph proved he's not a starting NFL quarterback. And Big Ben at his best is an elite starting quarterback. So obviously that's the biggest thing. And it's a good offense. It's not bad. It's probably not on the top caliber of what we've seen, just on talent base, but Ben at his best can elevate this offense to be competitive in the AFC.
No, I know. I was kind of tossing you a softball with that one, obviously. Of course, Big Ben is the biggest difference maker here. We saw what Devlin Hodges did last year for them. We saw what Mason Rudolph did. This team last year was really held back by their quarterback situation. You know, obviously the Connor and Schuster injuries were big, but at the same time, that quarterback play was atrocious. You know, and like you said, I don't think that it's necessarily like a top 5 offense, but I do think that there are some pieces, especially on that offensive line, adding a guy like Eric Ebron, adding the Chase Claypools. I think that it could maybe slip into like a top 10 offense as long as Ben's play hasn't fell off a cliff, you know?
Yeah, obviously they have the offensive line, but just quarterback and weapons-wise, this team does not stack up to me against a team like talent-wise, just weapons and the full picture. Obviously, they have the offensive line, which is the difference between them and a lot of teams that they have up front. But, dude, man, just talent. The Lions or Falcons, I think I take that talent pool over this. Bold take.
I don't think it's bold. I just think it's stupid, to be honest. I just think you're undervaluing 3 probably top 10 offensive linemen at their positions in Villanueva, Pouncey, and DeCastro. No, the Lions or Falcons, neither of them have that. So sure, while you can say Kenny Galladay or Julio Jones is better than Juju as your number 1, and sure, you could say the Lions running back room or Todd Gurley are better than James Conner, I think that Ben is right up there with the quarterbacks, if not the best of the group. That offensive line's better. And as a whole, I just don't see the comparison, to be honest. I think they are a step ahead of those teams, personally.
I really don't see him as a top 10 offense. I guess that's more where my problem was. They teeter on that top 10, and I think that's what you were saying. I just don't see him breaking it. I don't see the talent there. But I guess they could show up in this. We'll get to it when we get to the schedule. They might actually show up as a top 10 defense because of other factors, not the talent on the field.
No, I agree with that. And you misspoke there. Obviously, you said top 10 defense when you meant offense, but talking about top 10 defenses, this defense might be top 5, top 3. Last year, you could make an argument it was top 1. You know, so I'm like, where do you kind of fall with this defense now? Obviously, they've lost the Javon Hargraves, they've released the Mark Barons, but where do you think this defense kind of stacks up to those that we've seen so far?
I totally disagree with you again. I don't think this is a top 5 defense. I think they could waver on the top 10. I think that's fair. But no, I really don't see it, to be honest. Obviously, your pass rushers, you have some weapons. Bud Dupree, TJ Watt, Cameron Hayward going at the quarterback. That might be the best trio of pass rushers that we've seen put at hand on the field at one time. So I love that. Devin Bush obviously showed a lot of promise. Joe Hayden, I've always been a big Joe Hayden fan. Definitely kind of been a little bit undervalued. And then Minka, again, I said, all-pro player. But just the pieces in between, I don't see it. We've seen more complete defenses than this. We really have.
Where are the pieces in between that you don't like? Obviously, I don't think that Terrell Edmonds is a great strong safety. But other than that, where are your holes here?
Steven Nelson, Mike Hilton, Chris Wormley. They're not holes. Vince Williams. They're not holes, but they're not great players. They're average at best. And I guess it's better maybe than some people have. But I wouldn't consider them holes, but you could do better. There was better opportunity there. That's just my thought. But if I'm going to go better defenses, I got the Cowboys. I'll take the Ravens.
No. Stop right there. I agree with the Ravens, sure. The Dallas Cowboys had a hole as an entire unit. It was their secondary. There was nobody proven in that secondary outside of Ha-Ha. And you're going to say Steven Nelson, who's clearly an above-average NFL cornerback, you're going to say that that's a hole? No, that's maybe a weakness. Every team has weaknesses. This is a joke. Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt might be the most underrated D-line combo in the entire league. TJ Watt, Bud Dupree, they combined for over 20 sacks last season. You already talked about how Devin Bush, second-year player, he already had over 100 tackles last year. The man is just an absolute animal, and he has the chance to roam behind that fantastic front. Obviously, you lost Hargrave, but you replaced him with Wormley, who I don't think stacks up 100%, but it is a solid replacement considering they didn't have a ton of cap dollars. I don't see – to me, this is easily a top 5 defense. Easily.
Yeah, I think it's in the top 10. I don't think it hits top 5. And I think that's what I'm just a step behind you with this team. I just talent-wise, but again, I think they might perform – on paper, I think they're going to perform like you say they are. And I don't know if you want to transition into it yet, but because of this schedule, it's kind of a joke. So they might look like a top 5 defense next year. But if you put them against some of the schedules we've seen, this team does not perform.
We'll go right into the schedule off that. So the Vegas has their win total set at 9.5. And I think that that's indicative of the talent that they have. You obviously think it's due to the schedule. Where do you fall on this, Mike? Would you take the over or the under looking ahead to 2020?
I'll take the over just because this schedule, it kind of is a joke. I think this team, I really do. I think this team is a low-end wild card team at best. I really do. I do not like the talent. They have the playmakers. They definitely have the playmakers. I just don't like the pieces that aren't the playmakers. And I don't really like their offense. I think Juju kind of showed he's not a number 1 wide receiver. Antonio Brown makes people better. Antonio Brown is the real talent. Juju is just benefiting from that. And if we see 1,000 yards, we've been starting to put together a list of some of our players that are top 100 players. I think, like, you're seeing Devontae Parker get 1,000 yards at Miami. You're seeing Tyler Lockett. We just went Mike Williams. It's just not that hard to get 1,000 yards. He doesn't.
Okay, but that's the most unfair thing I've ever heard. Juju played 12 games last season, and you just said Tyler Lockett, Mike Williams, and Devontae Parker. Do you think that Devin Hodges or Mason Rudolph stack up to Ryan Fitzpatrick, to Russell Wilson, or who was the other one that you said?
Mike Williams.
Or Phillip Rivers? Absolutely not. They were the worst quarterback room in the entire NFL last year. That's not even a question. So, no, I completely agree that Juju was a beneficiary of AB. I don't think that Juju is a high-end wide receiver 1. But the man might as well have had you or me throwing to him last year. Like, come on. Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Did you not see the lines after Stafford? Like, there's plenty of bad quarterback play, and then people elevating that team beyond that wide receiver making still the plays and being productive. So I don't agree with that. I really don't think. I think he is a low end. I think he's a high end 2. He at best a 1A 1B. I don't think he is your number 1 wide receiver. I don't think he's there. So, but we're at the schedule, which is so funny. So, which we've not actually talked about. But this schedule is by far, I think, the easiest we've seen yet. And we're coming up, we have 11 videos after this. This is really a joke. This really is not a very difficult schedule. If 2 teams don't come out of this division, it actually is a joke. So I think this is the second team to come out of this division. I think this is the wild card spot. I'm favored in the Ravens, but I think this team has the talent to at least be a wild card, but I don't see him being a real contender. I really don't. I'll go to you, and you could slam me. After you slam me, what are some games you're looking for?
I just think that I think you're really overstating how easy the schedule is. I agree that it's not the hardest one in the world, but we've already covered the NFC East, and you just said the Cowboys have one of the top defenses in the league as well as the top offense. Like, that's a hard game. You have to play the Ravens twice. You have to play the Browns twice. You have to play the Eagles. You have to play whoever's going to come out of the AFC South, whether that's the Colts, who we've already said were a 9-win team, the Texans, who might be right up there, and the Titans, we saw what they did last year. Then you have the Buffalo Bills as well, who we're still, 8 videos away from them, but I believe we're going to say that they're our favorites to win the AFC East. So I don't think that this is some walk in the park. This is still a difficult schedule, but to answer your question, in terms of what games am I looking forward to, it's going to be probably my first one will be probably week 6. I think that most of those games before that, they should probably win. I think that on paper, they would be the favorites over those first 5. But in week 6, I do think that there's a real strong competition between them and Cleveland for who is the second best team in this division behind the Ravens. And I think that seeing how they stack up against Cleveland and potentially determining a part of that tiebreaker in terms of who might get second, who might get third, because there is a chance that both of these teams could come out of the AFC North. Honestly, they could both be wild card teams. So I do think that that'll be an incredibly important game pretty early in the season, and we'll kind of see how those teams stack up against each other. So I'll flip that back to you, Mike. What is one or two interesting games to you?
Yeah, I think so. So let me get this straight. Let me straighten what I've been saying because I've been slamming them a little too hard. But then I did say I think they're the second best team in this division. Um, I think the Browns have a really good competition. I think that's going to be a fun race to watch. I think the Ravens are kind of the clear favorites in the division, and unless Lamar Jackson gets hurt, which we're not predicting injuries, we're just saying full team, full roster, who's going to win. But I think that's going to be fun to watch. I think they're actually very close. I think the Steelers' star power is enough to bring them over the hump to be that next team. But one game I'm really excited for, as we did the video, I didn't realize how much I kind of like the team, but I think it's going to be a fun matchup to watch is the Colts. I think that's a fun – if they're making that late playoff push, and the Colts might be in the same situation. They could be both looking for that wild card spot. They could both be trying to make that late playoff push. I think it's going to be a fun game to watch. I think that's a really good game on the schedule.
No, I agree with that. I think if I had to give one more, it would probably be that Dallas game coming out of a bye week. Like you said, I do agree that Dallas has a great offense. So I do think it would be a great test for this defense that while we might disagree whether it's top 5 or top 10, it is an elite unit. We do agree with that at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, though, if you agree with Mic'd Up and you enjoy our videos, make sure you guys are liking, commenting, subscribing. We don't have very many teams left, but if you guys have a favorite team that we haven't done yet, just toss them in the comments. Mike, if somebody says, hey, do the Cleveland Browns next, who are we doing next, Mike?
I think we actually are doing the Cleveland Browns next. So the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, I think we are. So that'd be a perfect coincidence right there. But other than that, Mike, I don't have anything else. Or what about you?
No, I think we mic'd up and we mic'ing out. Deuces.
Peace, guys.